Hey everyone, I'm Rachel, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about kind of our beliefs, or specifically kind of my beliefs and how I kind of come to the conclusions that I do, and also the difference between like fact-based beliefs and faith-based beliefs, and how I feel like in an argument, in a logical, reasonable argument, I feel like one is a lot better to have than the other. So before I get started, I just want to kind of like run through a couple of sort of definitions, or the definitions that I'll be using of three words in particular, and these are belief, faith and facts. So this is mostly just so I don't have to kind of like reiterate myself every time, and so it's kind of going to make it a little bit clearer what I'm saying, and hopefully it'll keep this video a little bit shorter, because we all know I'm prone to rambling. So my definitions that I'm going to be using for this are, when I talk about belief or beliefs, I'm going to be talking about an acceptance that something exists or is true, a firmly held opinion. And a belief can either be fact-based or faith-based. When I talk about faith, I'm talking about the complete trust or confidence in something, often without evidence. And when I talk about facts, I'm going to be talking about a thing that is known or proved to be true using information, data, some kind of evidence. So facts are these things that we know to be true, and we can base our beliefs on facts that we know. Facts are reliable, they're based on evidence that is repeatable and accurate, data, information, knowledge. Facts are objective. They can't be changed by our opinions or emotions or feelings or whatever. Like, sometimes people may look at data and interpret it slightly differently, but ultimately you can't change what the data is. But when it comes to faith, faith is subjective. It's often influenced by your emotions or your personal feelings or your experiences, something like that. Now, it's worth saying that sometimes kind of faith is backed up by evidence and facts, but not always and not often. So how do we know the difference between whether a belief is based on fact or faith? We look at the evidence. So first you have to take a statement, a belief, a question, basically kind of like a hypothesis. And this could be something really, really big, like, asking whether the Earth orbits the sun, or does God exist? Or it could be something like wondering how many spoons we have in our house. And right now, I could hold the belief we have 5 spoons in our house. And right now that's based on faith, because I don't actually have any evidence to back it up. I might have some experience with spoons in this house, I've used spoons in this house, I've bought spoons for this house, but I don't have any solid data or evidence. So that is a belief based on faith. This is a really basic and silly example, but bear with me. So here, when I start to say, I believe we have 5 spoons in this house, wording becomes really, really important. The specifics. When I say I believe we have 5 spoons in this house, I mean I believe we have 5 spoons in this house, no more, no less. It doesn't matter about spoons we own that aren't in this house, it only matters about the ones in this house. So as it currently stands, this belief can be proved right or wrong by looking at the evidence and collecting data. So what counts as evidence? Starting with this example, we have to make sure we define all the terms we're using, we understand them fully. So firstly, spoons. What counts as a spoon? What kinds of objects are classified as spoons? Is a serving spoon a spoon? Is a tablespoon a spoon? Is a spork a spoon? And then what about the house? How are we defining this house or my house? Is it just this room? Is it the living room and kitchen? Does the balcony count? What about communal areas in the building of this flat, like the corridors and stuff like that? What counts there? So defining what our words mean, what our boundaries are, how we're going to be counting the data, where we're going to be collecting the data, all this stuff is really, really important to consider. And once we have a solid understanding of how we're defining that, then we can get started actually collecting evidence. So in the case of spoons, it's really, really simple. I simply go around this flat, collect all the spoons, look at them and count them. Sometimes collecting data, often collecting data is a lot more difficult than that, but we're using a simple example to make it nice and easy because I'm a simple person. So I've got my spoons, I've counted them up, I know they're all definitely spoons, I know they're all definitely found in this flat, and I see 7 spoons in front of me. So my belief was wrong, and now it has to change based on the facts. And I can say, I believe we have 7 spoons in this house. Here's the evidence and the data to back it up because it's a belief based on a fact. Now, this evidence is good because it's repeatable. anyone else could come in here, they could collect the same spoons, they could search the same area, and they still wouldn't find any more or less spoons, because this is how many spoons we have in the house, and you can't change that. It's not gonna change unless someone acts upon the spoons, but I'll get to that in a minute. So it's repeatable, and it's reliable because, okay, I did collect the data, and I might be a little bit biased here, but anyone else could come in and they would collect the same data. And also, just doing it this time round, I have no reason to lie, exaggerate, or change the data in any way. I have nothing to gain or lose from the outcome, so we can trust my data. But then, what if the data changes? What if we break a spoon, lose a spoon, buy more spoons? The data can change. And that's why the belief we have 7 spoons in this house might not always be fact forever. It might not always be true. So that's why each time before we make the statement we have 7 spoons in this house, we have to make sure that our data is still reliable, that our data is still correct. Is it still reliable, repeatable, and accurate? Do we still have 7 spoons in this house? Is this house still the same house? Have we redefined what a spoon is since then? And it might sound silly, but you can't just accept that because something was true once, it's going to be true forever. So this is just a really, really basic example, a really silly, simple example. But taking those same principles, you can apply them to even bigger issues, even ones like, does God exist? Did humans and apes share a common ancestor? Deciding whether data and evidence is valid or not, whether you can actually use it, whether it's reliable, that is probably the most important step in that whole process. And just kind of briefly, I want to take this opportunity to kind of talk about using the Bible as an evidence source. And I don't just mean the Bible actually, I mean all written texts, all holy books, just you know what, actually any evidence that is written down at all. I don't care if it's the Bible, the Quran, whether it's a legal document from the 1600s or whether it's a magazine. Take any article in this magazine and you'll be able to apply the same questions and principles I'm going to be about to talk about. You'll be able to apply it to anything written in this as well. So a lot of the time I found on my videos and watching other people's videos, a lot of people come back and say, but in the Bible it says, or but in the Quran it says. My issue with using those as sources of evidence or data is that I don't think they're particularly reliable. Now, taking the Bible just purely as one example, because it's the holy text I know most about, that's the only reason I'm using it. That could be a really great reliable source of evidence for some topics. For example, if we wanted to understand how language was written and kind of communicated back like 3,000 years ago, we could look at parts of the Bible and examine those parts and say, oh, people use this grammatical structure, people use these types of words. And that would be a really, really great source of information for us, provided we could definitely prove that those passages were written at those times in that location. But what about for things like, does God exist, or when we're talking about evolution or things like that? I don't believe it's reliable evidence for those kinds of topics, because we need to ask a few more questions first before then. Each time you try and use a piece of text or a piece of the Bible as evidence, I'd just like you to ask yourself a few questions first, including who wrote it, when was it written, why was it written, did the author gain or lose anything as a consequence of writing it, did anyone ask them to write it? If it's a translation, then how accurate is the translation? Who translated it? When did they translate it? Why did they translate it? And if they're supposedly retelling real events, like it's some kind of memoir or something, then how long after those events was it written? Was the person writing about the events actually there at the event, or is it like a second-hand story from someone else? Are there any other sources to corroborate their story? There's like all these things, and there's actually a lot more things you could ask as well. But I don't care whether it's the Bible or the Quran or Anne Frank's diary and you'll learn about the Holocaust. You should ask all of these questions every time you use a written source of evidence. And there's similar questions you should use and ask about all different kinds of evidence. And until you do that, it's hard to say whether something's reliable or not. You can't just assume because something's written or something's been accepted before that it is reliable, it is trustworthy. I think it's important that people learn to look at these things for themselves and think for themselves and figure out if it's reliable or not, or if they can use it. And that's another reason why I always say you can't use the Bible as evidence for the Bible. because that's just kind of weird circular reasoning and you can't do that. But that's a whole other issue. But hopefully this video wasn't too confusing or long or rambly or weird, and hopefully maybe you learned something. Maybe I was wrong about something and you want to correct me. But for now, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully I've done some good, I'm not sure. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you again soon.